Oh, where the worlds of horse racing converge on what used to be a weekly basis, but now, frankly, whenever we feel like it, or when it coincides with a Breeders' Cup Challenge Series win and you're in race. Yes, this is the latest edition of Cocktails and Conversation, or Beat My Backdrop. Try and beat this. It looks if it looks like I'm incarcerated, it's because I am, but only in a hotel room just outside Dublin, in quarantine ahead of my first visit to Belmont at the Big A, or Aqueduct Racetrack, as you and I better know it. Brittany, with the newsroom feel and all dressed up, but not as dressed up as that man.
No.
Look at him. Look at him.
You know, I was just mentioning that I had a fall cocktail menu tasting / photo shoot today for Baccarat Hotel. So I'm knee deep in fall seasonal cocktails, and I ran back and I was thinking to myself, I have to get back, I have to set up, I have to change. And at that, I stopped myself. I said, why would I change if I'm already dressed up? I mean, no, this is the best occasion to be dressed up for, is Cocktails and Conversation.
You look sharp. Doesn't he look good?
Thank you.
He is a gentleman and a scholar, and he's showing all of us up. I mean, he often does that, but especially today.
Never. But thank you guys. How are you? We have an exciting weekend of races coming up, don't we?
Oh my goodness.
I want Mark to tell us all about it.
No, the lead-in is enough. I mean, I know we have the Lucas Classic coming up.
That's
right?
good.
So a lot of big contenders in that race. Hot Rod Charlie, we've got Art Collector. Help me out here, but a lot of good stuff going on there. We've got Life is Good in the Woodward Stakes this weekend.
Mark, what have we done to you?
I'm trying. I'm doing my best. But super excited. I know we can feel the momentum now leading up to Breeders' Cup weekend. So I'm excited for today's show.
Oh, it's just an insane shower of Breeders' Cup Challenge Series winning your in races this weekend. Britt, 12, a dirty dozen.
Oh, it's going to be sensational. 38 days away from the Breeders' Cup in Lexington, Kentucky. You mentioned a lot of them are coming overseas. I mean, you have the Arc de Triomphe coming up on Sunday. I'll be honest, Nick, I'm not familiar with the majority of the horses running in this race. Obviously, no Baid. He's running in the Champion Stakes. So, I mean, who's the headliner of that race? Because it is such a prestigious race.
But Prix d'Arc de Triomphe is now worth... it's about 5 million sterling, so around about 2.5 million sterling to the winner, and it's drawn a huge field, so much so that it's created quite a bit of controversy because there's a maximum field of 20, and they're going to have to use the ballot for the first time I can remember. It's like a kind of Kentucky Derby style. I think we were going to get 24 or 25 declared. And Very Elegant, the star mare who'd won 11 Group or Grade 1 races in Australia and came to be trained in France for this race, because her 2 prep races in France haven't been spectacular, the French handicapper who classifies all the runners has dropped her by 7 pounds, which has meant she's missed the cut, which has gone down like a cup of cold sick, frankly. New trainer Francis Graffard, who's absolutely laid into the French authorities, saying he's embarrassed by his own country and whatnot. It's caused a bit of a diplomatic incident. Also, about the 4th favorite, filly called Yen, she's out as well, so she won't make the cut either. So it's not gone down great. Baid, as you say, is not running because there's no obvious real superstar in the race. That's encouraged everybody to have a go. Ground's going to be quite soft, huge field. The pace is going to be very strong. 4 Japanese in the race, all of whom we want a strong gallop to run at. It's going to be one of those who's in front when the music stops races. It's going to be really, really difficult to intuit who might come out on top.
Well, to be honest, that's quite exciting, right? If you don't have this massive superstar horse, which we all love, don't get me wrong, we're going to be talking Life is Good in the Woodward coming up. It's a small field there because of his presence. But it's also exciting for maybe smaller owners, trainers to have their crack at one of the most prestigious races in the world. So from that standpoint, and probably a better betting race, right? So,
it's an amazing betting race, and particularly with the interest that's going to come from Japan as well. I mean, if there is a superstar in the race, it's probably Title Holder, who's arguably the best horse in Japan at the moment. The Japanese have been on this quest to win the Arc. It is that, they won Breeders' Cup races, 4 races on Saudi Cup night, 5 races on Dubai World Cup night when we were reporting on it, Brittany. The Arc is the one they've always wanted. Since El Condor Pasa was beaten by Manger 22 years ago, and then you had Orfevre, who was clear inside the final furlong and tied up and got beaten on the line. This is the one they want. And Title, there is an exceptional horse in the race. It's going to be him.
All right, so that's overseas. Paris Longchamp. You'll have 5 win-in-your-in races, I believe, from Paris Longchamp, including the Arc de Triomphe. But stateside, we have a lot of racing action. You and I will both be at Belmont at the Big A for 4 win-in-your-in races there, including the Champagne Grade 1 event. They just drew those races. I was kind of taking a brief look over them. The Woodward is not a win-in-your-in, but Life is Good has already secured a spot. So, hey, let's just pour it on even more. But we do have the final win-in-your-in for the Longines Breeders' Cup Classic at Santa Anita on Saturday. So Country Grammar, who was second to Flightline, kind of the headliner there.
I mean, I was going to say, what sort of an impact do you think the Awesome Again is going to have on who's going to run in the Breeders' Cup Classic? Obviously, it's not going to have an impact on the result if Flightline shows up hale and hearty. But is it going to have an impact on who might be Flightline's opponents and how big that classic field might end up being?
Honestly, it doesn't seem like too many people are ducking Flightline because they see, and we're going to hear from Elliott Walden in a bit, so I would love to hear because he has Life is Good, which is a sensational runner. But it doesn't seem like Flightline's necessarily scaring anybody away because it's a $6 million purse. There is still a lot to run for, even if you think that Flightline is just too good. I mean, which is nice to hear. You don't want it to be a 5-horse field. So I think we're actually going to have a really full gate for the Longines Breeders' Cup Classic. And if you say Flightline is here and everybody else is not close to him, the run for second is still a very, very, very good one. But again, you got to get there.
Well, here's a question for you. If Flightline didn't exist, or wasn't pointing towards the Breeders' Cup Classic, and you assembled a field including Life is Good, Olympiad, Country Grammar, I don't know, maybe Mishriff, but he's going to the Arc now, and 1 or 2 others. I mean, Epicenter and a couple of the other good 3-year-olds.
Tabor just won the Pennsylvania Derby.
Yeah. So Tabor, exactly. How good a classic would you say that was, even without Flightline?
One of the best.
There you go.
I mean, is this not one of the, if we take it today, the field that we see in those, classic rankings that you and I both vote on, is that not one of the best classic fields we have had ever? Talent, quality, depth.
I suspect there will be more eminent racing historians writing in and saying, don't be ridiculous. What about the one in 1989 or what about the one in 1997? But I
like hyperboles.
Yeah, well, I mean, it creates debate. It's certainly got the potential to be. And some fascinating ones. I like how behind Flightline, the picture's been quite dynamic as well. But every week you've been forced to think about something. You're forced to think about, right, is Life is Good, who we're going to talk about with Elliott, is Life is Good a confirmed or likely strong stayer at 1.25 miles, or is he always going to come up short at that distance? How fast is a horse like Tabor moving forward? Is he still streetwise enough? Is Epicenter getting better and better so fast that he could easily be the best 3-year-old come the race? All these, what is Country Grammar now? What did Dubai mean? Did it mean anything? All this kind of stuff you've been asked to think about.
Which is what we love in horse racing, right? Mark, who's your wait, I feel like I can't say that because we're talking Life is Good. But do you have a favorite race that you're looking forward to come Breeders' Cup time? Would it be the Classic?
I would say the Classic. Yeah. I mean, it's just like you're saying, so many great contenders. So it's been almost like this intrigue or this mystery that's been evolving over this past year, because we've spoken many times about the somewhat smaller fields at time, but the high quality of the talent that we're seeing in these horses. So I feel like there might be some surprises awaiting us come November, but it's going to be exciting no matter what. But I'm ready for the Classic. I'm going to have a Tory Cup in my hands wherever I am. So
we like it. Well, also just to cover all of that, win and you're in action, the Speakeasy Stakes is a win and you're in for the Turf Sprint. And at Churchill Downs, the ACAC Stakes is a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. The Lucas Classic, actually not, but it did get a good field, including Kentucky Derby winner, Rich Strike.
Yep.
Wow. And how well did he run in the Travers as well?
He ran huge. Can we talk about that? Like, he's a good horse. It wasn't just a fluke 80-1 shot, but that's another discussion.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of was a fluke, but I mean, even so, he still ran a great race in the Travers.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, he's not running up the track. I mean, this was a good effort. He was what? I mean, nosed out, or maybe it was half ahead for second.
Remarkable.
So all this says is the discussions will continue with 38 days to go. And that's what is fun about horse racing is everybody's got an opinion.
Yep.
They have. And you've got an opinion as well. Get involved in the show. Julie Ingles involved. Julie, we see Julie everywhere, from Churchill Downs to Ascot and beyond. Rich Strike is awesome, says Julie. Clive Ricketts, Alan Kerr is the wrong price in the Arc at 100-1 for Baid's trainer, William Haggis. Dorian Dickinson, keep an eye on Epicenter. We will. Katie loves Country Grammar. And Hot Rod Charlie, the forgotten horse. Hot Rod Charlie, Brittany.
Yeah, he's doing great. I mean, he got a good post position in the Lucas Classic, outside post. Tough field, again, and probably not his distance. We know he kind of likes to run more of a pack animal. But they have Tyler Gaffleone aboard. He was aboard for his second place finish behind Essential Quality in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. So who knows? One day I think will be his day.
I think it's time to start chewing over this the life is good question, and there's no better person to do that with than with our very special guest this week. Brittany, is it time to bring him in?
Yes, it is. I was ready, 5 minutes ago, but I wanted to confirm we were ready to bring him in.
All right, there he is. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Elliott Walden, former trainer and more recently celebrated as the president and CEO of WinStar Farm, with any amount of champion racehorses in the last decade and a half, most notably Life is Good at present. Elliott, hi, how are you?
Good. How you guys doing?
We're too excited about what's to come, right? I mean, what's the sentiment for you, the entire team at WinStar, Mr. Kenny Trout, just in lead up to the Breeders' Cup?
Oh, just really super excited. Can't wait to see Life is Good back in action this weekend in advance of the Breeders' Cup, and he's training really well. I also have a piece of Country Grammar as well, so we're excited to see him out west, and just blessed with some really good horses right now.
I never forget the sight of you walking into the winner's circle in Dubai. I mean, and it did occur to me that quite often you have a piece of, or all of, or a major part of more than one good horse in a race like the Breeders' Cup Classic. And in Dubai World Cup, all the attention was on Life is Good, and there suddenly you were, congratulating Country Grammar. How do you kind of control your emotions at a time like that?
Well, it is an interesting dynamic. We felt like Life is Good would win the World Cup, and yet we also felt like Country Grammar was a horse that at 1.25 miles is an extremely good horse, and if Life is Good didn't win, Country Grammar could. I've always been under the adage that you don't try to dictate what's best for the owner, you try to dictate what's best for the horse. And so Country Grammar deserved to run in the World Cup, regardless of whether we own Life is Good or not, and vice versa. So, that's why we put both of them in. Some people might say, well, why would you put both of them in? Why would you want to run one against the other? But I've always felt that you do what's right for the horse, not for the owner. So the right thing for each horse was to run in the World Cup, and that's what we did.
And Elliott, I'm curious, because of your time spent training, how much does that factor into those decisions to run multiple horses against each other?
Well, funny you ask. I had a 5-horse field in the Super Derby in 1999 and had the first and second choice with Menifee and Ecton Park. And Menifee was the heavy favorite, and Ecton Park won. They were first and second. And it wasn't real comfortable for the Menifee camp, and yet, I explained to both Mr. Hancock and Jimmy Stone, who owned Menifee, and Mark Stanley, who owned Ecton Park, that it was the right thing for each horse to run. That both of them deserved a chance at the Grade 1. Ecton Park had not won a Grade 1 yet, and so we were trying to add to Menifee's resume as well. So that, that's where I learned that, Brittany, and it was a long, long time ago, unfortunately.
Elliott, I know we're going to talk much more about Life is Good and some of the great horses you've been involved with latterly, but I'd love to dial it all the way back to the beginning. You're part of a dynasty of horsemen, and so many of your family have excelled in this game. Was there ever any indication when you were growing up that the horses wouldn't be part of your life?
No, I've been very fortunate, Nick, that I knew what I wanted to do at an early age. And today, having 4 kids, being involved with friends who have children, they don't, a lot of times they don't have the focus that I was fortunate to have. So from 14 on, every day that I woke up, I was thinking about training horses, being with horses. At that time, I knew I didn't want to be on a 300-acre farm, which was my dad's farm. I knew that the action of the racetrack, the smell of the day, walking in and at first post at Keeneland, and that smell, and you all can know what I'm talking about, just that feel, that energy, was something that I really gravitated to. So I gravitated to the racetrack at an early age, wanted to train. I didn't know that I would eventually come back full circle and be 5 miles from where I grew up. But, in a lot different light. We have 2,500 acres and 500 horses. It's quite different than 300 acres and 3 stallions that we had growing up.
It's interesting how life plays out. Every person that's involved in this industry has a different reason for getting involved. What was it about the training aspect that you loved so much? You mentioned the action, but I often hear so much of it has to do with the animal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the horse is such a magnificent creature. And to understand, to be a good horse trainer, you have to read the horse. The horse might not talk to you, but you have to read the horse. The horse will tell you, he just won't speak to you. And so, that dynamic, that trying to understand the horse is what drew me into horse racing. Just trying to figure it out because they don't speak to you verbally. It's not obvious a lot of times. And you have to dig around the corner. You have to dig deep sometimes. And it's a fascinating conquest, and to see it work out, to see your horse do well, and to see them, I mean, even the expression on their face when they win is amazing. And so it's a real connection. It's like your children.
I love this idea. I'm sorry, Nick.
No, go ahead.
I love this idea, Elliott, of when you were saying doing what's best for the horse. So even what races to enter. And do you find yourself kind of just your main interest is the potential of the horse itself? So even if they don't win a race, in your mind, are you thinking, I know what this horse is capable of, and I just want to see it, reach its full potential? How much does that factor into some of those decisions?
Well, it factors in a lot, but you also don't want to be competitive. You want to put them in the right place. You want to see a horse succeed. The worst feeling in the world is to walk over there on Derby Day, be 25 or 30 to 1 and finish 15th. Yeah. Sounds like a great idea on the front end. Everybody's excited about the Kentucky Derby, about the possibility. Then you have a horse like Rich Strike win, as you all were talking about earlier, and it makes that dream even greater. So we'll have more of those kind of horses next year, I would imagine, that have that dream, that have the points. But it is a bad feeling when you know that you've overmatched your horse. And quite honestly, you feel that going in a lot of times. You say, I'm not sure. That's the great thing about a horse like Life is Good, is you never feel overmatched. And I know there's a lot of talk about Life is Good in Flightline, and so that's going to be a great opportunity down the road as long as we do well this weekend and he comes out well.
That is the question. Wait, Nick, I'm sorry. You had a question following up, Max.
I did, because Elliott's taken us there, so we need to talk about this weekend. But I did just want to, because you raised the Rich Strike issue, I wanted to pick your brain here, just on because it is one of the great unanswered questions. How did Rich Strike win the Kentucky Derby?
Pace. The pace fell apart. But he got a great trip. I will tell you, Nick, that if you go back and look at most Kentucky Derby winners, they have a good trip. They save ground. They don't have a straw in their path. They weave, either they're in front and they have a good trip, or they weave their way through the field and never get stopped. It's kind of like you on a highway. If you're rolling along with the car and you weave through traffic, You don't see a horse get stopped and come back and win the Kentucky Derby most of the time. So he had a great trip. The pace fell apart in front of him, and he was right on the day. And you're right, he did run well in the Travers, and he vindicated the race in the Derby, I think.
I think it was good for the sport too, for people to say,
Absolutely.
"Oh my goodness, an 80-1 shot can win," right? But we got to go back.
That's a dream.
Yeah, it is the dream. That's why people are in this sport. It's why they watch the sport. It's for the dream and for that moment, that adrenaline rush, whether you have a horse in the race, you have a bet on the horse, or you're just a fan. But back to what you mentioned, Flightline versus Life is Good. Firstly, I want to get your take, because we know how good Life is Good is in your opinion of him. What's your opinion of Flightline?
Phenomenal. He's an amazing horse. I think they're both generational type horses. I know my experience and our team at WinStar, David Hanley's been around a lot of good horses. Life is Good is up there with Justify. I would throw Victory Gallop in the mix as well, the horses that I've been around. They just breathe different air. I know Bob had mentioned before he ran him the first time, he put him in the same category as Justify and American Pharoah. So they're both that kind of special horse that are, generational type horses. Flightline is that kind of horse as well. He is a machine. And, when a horse gives you chills to watch him run, it is pretty special, and it's a great thing. John's a tremendous trainer, done a super job with him, and it's going to be fun.
You mentioned horses that give you chills. I remember when Life is Good debuted, and it was that type of performance, and he's followed that up with equally impressive, I would say more impressive performances, in each and every start. And so, how lucky are we to be fans of horse racing right now with horses like Life is Good, Flightline, and of course overseas, Baaeed? It feels like a special time, Elliott.
Oh, it is. And I mean, the thing about Life is Good and Flightline, quite honestly, Flightline could be in any one of 3 races on Breeders' Cup Day. And I think the same thing's true of Flightline. I mean, he could probably win the sprint. We know he very, very, would most likely win the mile. And yet the Classic is also right there as well. So just phenomenal athletes. Horses that have speed, that can carry speed. It's going to be tremendous. I know Todd has said to me more than once he wants another shot at Jackie's Warrior somewhere down the line, but we're just not going to get it. But I think that that race to Todd sticks out as a race that got away and was unfortunate for Life is Good to get beat. But Jackie ran a great race, and Jackie, I'm not diminishing Jackie in any way, because he's a tremendous horse as well.
The funny thing for me about the race you're talking about, Elliott, is that even though Life is Good was defeated, it almost cemented his reputation in my mind as a horse that was out of the ordinary, because he was coming off the absence. He was running at a distance which nobody thought he would excel over, and you're thinking, hang on, he's going to win this.
And he was in front of Jackie's Warrior, who's a tremendous sprinter, and he was in front of him going down the backside.
And you're thinking, if this horse can get a bit further, he's an absolute freak. And then the notion that if he goes into any race off the back of an important victory, the notion that he would go into that race and not be favorite is kind of extraordinary. I mean, you must kind of think that.
Yeah. And what do you like? Which race are you referencing with him?
Well, I mean, so say everything goes well this weekend. You go to the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Okay,
Flightline's going to be the favorite, heavy favorite.
That's right. Yeah.
It puts it in perspective, doesn't it?
It does, and I mean, in a lot of ways, I'm not saying Life is Good is forgotten, but there's so much talk about Flightline, and a lot of it's well deserved. But Life is Good is one of those horses that is in that same category. I'm not saying he's better than Flightline. We'll find that out on the racetrack, and obviously a mile and a quarter is right at what we feel like is Life is Good stretch distance, and I think that would it be a phenomenal race? I tried to talk the Breeders' Cup into putting up $20 million, and let's run 7.5 furlongs, and let's have Flightline, Jack Christopher, Life is Good, Jackie's Warrior.
Yeah.
What kind of race would that be?
Phenomenal. I'd love to know what their response was to that.
Barbara Banke said no.
But you're planting the seed again on tonight's program, so that's good.
But wait, did we just take away from that, Elliott, that the plan is to run in the Classic because you said it would be figured out on the track between Life is Good and Flightline?
Yeah, well, I don't think that's been a surprise. We're as long as he runs good Saturday, wins and comes out of it well. Obviously, we got to take care of the horse first. But we're not going to duck anybody. We feel like the race in Dubai was a quagmire of a racetrack that was 3 or 4 seconds off par. The Breeders' Cup or the sprint over there, very fast horses went 111 and change. The Godolphin Mile went 37, maybe 38. I'm not sure. I can't remember the mile. I know the sprint went 11 and change. That track was off 3 or 4 seconds, especially the mile and a quarter. So they went 205. Hot Rod Charlie, Country Grammar. I mean, they don't go 205. They go 202. I think so. I think it'll be interesting on a faster racetrack. That's all.
I suppose also, Elliott, even though you are commercially minded, you're operating stallions, you're operating racehorses at a very high end, and you always have to have maintaining their value uppermost in your mind. What part of your mind is thinking as a sportsman, I cannot disrespect a horse like Life is Good and duck any horse?
That's right. That's 100% right. We're sportsmen. Kenny, Mr. Trout's a sportsman. His family are sportsmen. And Flightline's going to be a very tall task. But we're not going to put him in the mile because there's a tough horse in the race, especially when we got a great horse. So we're excited. We're excited. Horse racing fans should be excited. They should applaud the fact that, as Brittany, you said earlier, that there's a lot of horses that want to take it on. I mean, you see that with the Triple Crown. When there's a Belmont and there's a Triple Crown on the line, a lot of times there's 10 or 12 horses in there because people want to compete. They want to be a sportsman. They want to try to see, be there as part of history. And so it's going to be just a phenomenal Breeders' Cup through and through. The horses coming from Europe, the sprint horses we have, like Jackie's Warrior, the milers, the dirt mile is going to be a fascinating race. I mean, it's just tremendous. That's what's so exciting about the Breeders' Cup.
Elliott, this is maybe a weird question, but you had mentioned earlier the look on a horse's face when it wins the race. Do you think that the horses in their mind are saying, "Put me in, coach. I want to do this. I want to compete." Do you get a sense that that's what they want to do just as much as you and your team?
Absolutely. I mean, good horses know how to win. I mean, you can see it. You can see the way their ears are laid back. You can see, a lot of times if a horse is going easy, their ears are going back and forth a little bit. What kind of effort they're putting forth. But good horses want to win. That's what's so fascinating about the horse. Life is Good's not saying, put me in the easier race. He's saying, let's go up against Flightline. Let's see what we got.
Elliott, go ahead. I'm gonna bring it back to something in his training career because we've circled a lot around it. But Nick, go first.
Yeah, the question I was going to ask, Brittany, will lead you on to that, because I was just going to ask very simply, Elliott, how much do you miss training racehorses?
At times I miss training. I'm so close to it, Nick, being involved with our horses on a daily basis, that if I were doing something else, instead of being involved with all these horses that we have and interacting, I have great relationships with the trainers we have. So from that standpoint, I get the camaraderie that is part of training horses, part of being on the backside, and then also just the day-to-day instance of it. So I don't miss it that much. I enjoy what I'm doing. I love working for the Trout family. They are unbelievable to work for. They empower us at the farm. They allow us to make big decisions. They trust us. It's a fascinating place to work because of that.
And Elliott, you've been at WinStar for some time now. How have you seen the farm and company as a whole grow since you've been there?
I mean, we started out with 400 acres when Mr. Trout and Mr. Kasner bought the farm from the Preston brothers. And we joke with Kenny all the time, we're at 2,500 acres. And I tell him, I say, you don't want to own all the land in Woodford County. You just want to own what's next to you. So we keep going out and out and out. Now we're at 2,500 acres and 16 stallions. We have about 180 brood mares on the farm. They have 160 foals. It's just a fascinating process of life, and everybody's involved. All the different managers, all the different people that work for them. It's a tremendous amount of people that are very dedicated, and that's a great part of it as well. That's probably been we have people that have worked there right from the inception. We have multiple 10-year employee, people that are dedicated, that tremendous team members that love WinStar and love the horse.
I cut you off next. My apologies again.
No, you absolutely didn't. It sounds like you're getting a massive amount of satisfaction from what you're doing at the moment. Standing that many stallions, Elliott, how difficult is it to sift through that process of what type of horse really makes it really likely to make the grade? That's a big number you've got there.
It is a big number, and we pride ourselves on giving every stallion their opportunity to make it. As you guys know, it's a different career. Like your racehorse, all your past performances, all your accolades on the racetrack get you to a second career as a broodmare or a stallion, and then at that point, it's game over again. You've got to prove yourself all over again, and so. Getting these stallions their opportunities by having the right kind of mare, both physically, conformationally, and with a pedigree that works, is all part of the process. We have a great team that helps us with that. Liam O'Rourke leads our breeding, our stallion seasons, recruitment efforts, and so we've got a great team that helps with that, and it's a challenge. It is a challenge to get the right mares to each horse, especially now because a lot of breeders want to go to the same horses. They want to breed 250 to Gun Runner this year, I'm sure, and Constitution and Into Mischief, and then the rest of them can go by their wayside. So that it is a challenge, but it's a fun challenge.
Oh, yeah. I mean, seeing how some of these owners and breeders match up, I find so interesting. My grandpa, he was a breeder way back when, and he loved to come up with hypotheticals. He wanted to name a horse hypothetical because he would try and do the matchups and the dosage profiles. I mean, it's too funny. It just goes, I mean, everyone has a different way of going about it. So yeah, that brings me back because my grandpa really loved that aspect of it. I want to take us back because we'd be remiss not to spend some time speaking about Victory Gallop and that ride that you went on with him, that he took you on. You talk about how if there's a Triple Crown on the line, you're not really there, people don't duck it necessarily. So can you just take us back to the lead up of that 1998? Real Quiet is obviously trying to go for the Triple Crown. What was that like for you?
It was a tremendous ride. It was probably as excited as I've been and disappointed at the same time when he got beaten the Kentucky Derby and Neck, because as a Kentucky boy, that was a dream. And so then fortunately enough came back the next year and got beat a neck with Menifee. But, those are the two closest that I had as a trainer. But, but to beat Real Quiet in the Belmont it felt like vindication. It just felt like it all came right. It was a challenging time. I learned a lot going through the process. It's one of the things Kenny said that he wanted to hire me for was because I had been through the experience of that, and you don't know what it's like until you go through the experience. Eric Reed probably understands a little bit more about the Triple Crown having been through it with Rich Strike, it's the same thing. It was, and to watch this race, watch Gary Stevens get this horse rolling, and then to win it by a nose, because I thought I wasn't sure we won it, Brittany. I thought that we might have gotten beat. He switched back to his inside lead late, and I didn't know if the head bob went our way, and to be second in the other two, it was like, gosh, second again. And so when they hung his number, it was a fascinating feeling. And you know, it was again. I mean, it was Mr. Preston. Do we want to run? We three brothers, Art, Jack, and JR. We want to try him again? Yeah, let's try him again. You know, and back then we ran in all three races, and so they were sportsmen. Yeah, they were sportsmen, and they said, "Let's go, let's go." Worst thing that happened, we finished second, and so that's history. When history was made, history was made for the horse. History was made for me. I met WinStar, met Kenny Trout and Bill Kastner. Out of that, it changed my life.
Elliott, it's not that long ago. I know it's a couple of decades ago, but it's not another lifetime. It's not another whole generation ago that Victory Gallop was second, and first in the three legs of the Triple Crown, and hard fought races each and every one. Has the breed really changed so much that people can't conceive of doing that now if they've been defeated in the first leg or the second leg?
Oh, I think the culture's changed. I mean, I amaze myself when I look back at, you know, I was blessed to have distorted humor as well. I mean, he ran 12 times in a year, ran him every 3 weeks. I'm thinking, what was I doing? You know, 2.5, 3 weeks. And now, you know, the culture is so different. I think back then you raced horses into a cycle of form. Now, you know, everybody's so focused on making sure they have their top effort every single time they run. I mean, Flightline's an example of that. I know that John is caretaking of the horse by taking care of him by spacing his races, because he wants that top effort every time. Well, back in you know, 2 decades ago, 3 weeks was a long time running a horse, and it has changed. And I don't have the real answer other than I think it's a trainer's decision as much as anything.
So you think it's just a sort of self-perpetuating phenomenon rather than the idea that horses fundamentally couldn't take what they could then?
Yeah, I do think that's part of it. I certainly do. I think trainers are more in tune with having that top effort, trying to get that peak performance every time instead of running them and letting them finish second or third. I think statistics draw into that tremendously. When they started putting stats in the racing form at the turn of the century, people, you know, I mean, it's all, you talk about it all the time. Guys winning at 26%. This guy's, he can't train a horse. He's winning at 10%. And he's, you know, he's probably had tremendous horses in his background, but he just doesn't have the horses now. So, I mean, there's a lot of that.
And you're waiting for that. I'm nodding because I know exactly what you're talking about. You're waiting for that perfect spot, and maybe that perfect spot doesn't come up because it often doesn't. There is a thought, and I think it would be so interesting to get your take on this, that 2022 in this day and age, we don't breed to race, we race to breed. What's your thought on that sentiment, that some people believe that that's why maybe careers of these really talented runners are maybe getting a little bit shorter?
It's funny, you know, Brittany, I saw a clip of the 2008 Preakness, and they were talking about the short fields. They were talking about, we're getting all these short fields. This was in 2008, right? The same type of dialogues we had. I will tell you that I think we have more horses running at 4 and 5 now than we did 10 years ago. And I think races like the Dubai World Cup, the Saudi race, the Pegasus, they impact my decisions about whether, I think we're going to try to run Country Grammar at 6.
Wow.
Because of those type of things. So 10 years ago, when you didn't have those opportunities, I will tell you that it's very difficult to keep a horse in training that's worth $10 million, because their insurance premium's about $500 or $600 right off the bat. If you're insuring them for mortality and their fertility. Okay. So you've got to win $1 million race to pay for that insurance premium. And so, you know, you also take the risk of devaluing them. And so there's a lot that people don't understand that goes into those decisions. When we brought back Life is Good, we felt like that we needed to go to Dubai or Saudi to justify bringing him back because of the purse. And so that's what we did. That's why we put him on that path. We were like, okay, we either need to retire him or we need to think about going to one of these races that we could justify having him in training, and then focus on the latter half of the year about how we get to the Breeders' Cup. So, you know, I think you're seeing that more and more today than you are, you know, 5 or 6 years ago. And we were criticized for retiring Super Saver after his 3-year-old year and some other horses. So I know our position has changed. We've thought about it differently because of these races.
I think that's a unique perspective too, because you've been on all sides of the coin, right? So thank you for sharing that. Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was talking to Bill Farish the other day, and you know, the hypothetical about does Flightline race on next year, and I guess most of us know
they have to race him next year. No, we're going to stud this year. No, I'm just teasing.
I know where you're at. I know where you're at. And there's this kind of, we're sort of living in half fantasy land that he might. And I said, well, you know, if you do, when Terry Finley was on this show, he said, well, we'd have to think about going to the Middle East, to Saudi and Dubai for the same reason. And he said, well, you have to. If you're going to do this, you've kind of got to go all in, because otherwise it's not really worth it. And there's, you know, you've got to try and win the lion's share of $20 million. Otherwise, what's the point?
Right. And we wanted to take on Nick Sco. We wanted to take on the best horse, the horse of the year, and the Pegasus. So that was job one. We got that done. And then it just seemed a little tight to the Saudi race. And so that's why we skipped that and went to Dubai, because it was 4 weeks. Horse runs that hard and then has to ship. 4 weeks is not necessarily the reason, but to ship across the globe and run in 4 weeks. We didn't want to put him in a vulnerable situation. And so that's why we chose the World Cup at 1.25 miles.
I think people are getting that insight as to how difficult these decisions can be sometimes. You know, there's so many factors at play with horses at all levels. And that's what you see with all of your runners and horses you breed and sell. And it's just, it's a fascinating business, and you're giving us an insight into all of it, which is amazing. Okay, this weekend, rail draw, Life is Good. Woodward, not too many horses want to tackle him. What are your thoughts on the big race at the Big A? So we're Belmont at the Big A.
Yeah, well, we're excited. We've been waiting to run him back since the Whitney, and felt like that, you know, 12 weeks to the Breeders' Cup Classic was going to, or 13, whatever it was from the Whitney, was not the right thing to do. So we looked at one of the races and felt like this race would be the right race to run him in. So we're excited to get him out on the track. Of course, the good Lord might have a little rain. Obviously, we're thinking about the people in Florida, and the thoughts, our prayers go out with them right now. As I've seen videos today, it's tough. And so, you know, all that rain's probably going to come up east. So I think we have a possibility of having some rain there. We think he can handle it, but it adds another variable you're not really wanting to handle at this point. But good horses overcome a lot. We're very confident in Life is Good. Very hot, extremely hot the day of the Whitney. And he got hot and still won, still put on a show like he did, and beating Hot Rod Charlie and others, and Happy Saver and things. So we feel good about him, and we're excited. Todd told me the other day he's one of the most amazing horses he's ever been around, which is saying an awful lot, saying a whole lot more than me saying he's a good horse. The Todd and Bob to say he's a great horse, it means a lot. Todd said he's the most consistent workhorse he's ever seen. That every single time he's worked, he's amazing. And that's
Trevor
where
Denman would say.
Are.
Yeah, as Trevor Denman would say, even though I don't believe he's called Life is Good, he's poetry in motion. You could have an east-west, nice day. Country Grammar, they just eight horses in the awesome, again, Country Grammar post position 4. So best of luck there
Good.
too. Could be a really fun afternoon.
It sure could. Sure could.
Elliott, I'm guessing we will see you at the Big A on Saturday.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it. Mr. Trout's going to be there as well.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
Fantastic.
Wonderful.
If ever we needed an excuse, not that we do, to go there, Life is Good has provided us all with one. And if you can't be there, make sure you join us on NBC 4 o'clock Eastern for a 2-hour live show on the main network.
That's great. That's exciting. It's on the main network.
Oh yeah, it'll be great. I think 2 win and you're in races, 4 races in total. Nick and I experiencing the Big A for the very first time. Elliott, have you been there? What are we in store for?
Well, it is an experience. I'm usually there in December, so it'll be nicer to be there in 1st of October than late December. In December, at they have a tremendous card around the Naira Mile and the Remsen, and so we typically participate in some way in that card, and it's the first week of December, and so it's cold usually there then, so it's going to be nice to be there in October. I think it's going to be a great day, and it's exciting to see what Belmont's doing, the changes, the reason they're at Aqueduct. I'm excited to see what Belmont's doing with the changes they're making.
Elliott, thank you so much for being with us this evening. We will see you Saturday. Life is indeed good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elliott. I'm excited to watch on Saturday. I'm revved up for this.
Coast to coast and then overseas.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be an insane weekend.
It is. Yeah. It is. This is the great last. It's really the last great staging post, isn't it? I know we then roll on to Keeneland and we have the final trials, but if you're talking internationally, this is the kind of last great staging post weekend, and it's very exciting. I'm just thrilled that we've got a marquee horse running at Aqueduct as well.
Oh, I mean, can we say behind the scenes that you were so bothered by the fact that Life is Good might not be in our window? You ask and you shall receive, Nick Luck.
Well, it as soon as it popped that he was definitely going to run, I had to sort of double check, because in my mind I'm thinking, Life is Good at the Big A. Is that happening? And is that the day that we're there? Yes, it is. Hang on a minute. This race may not be in our window, which is not good for anybody. So to anyone who did make that happen at Naira and Breeders' Cup and NBC.
Yeah. And now you guys are going to be together, right?
Oh, yeah.
Together at the Big A?
We are actually physically together, yes.
Fantastic.
Rather than just
hopefully I will be with you guys soon as well. We're still trying to figure that out. But you got to make sure that you have a cocktail for me when you're together, or a mocktail if for whatever reason you don't want to drink that day. Because, so you see how I'm dressed today. I mentioned that I was coming from a fall cocktail menu tasting / photo shoot. And
photo shoot? You did not tell us it was a photo shoot.
It was mostly the cocktails. Just in case there was a blurry portrait shot kind of in the background, I tried to dress up for it. But we spent so much time on this show talking about the anatomy of a great cocktail. What we haven't really spoken about is the anatomy of a great cocktail menu, because that's a whole different art. It's one thing to create a delicious drink, have a beautiful story behind it, but you have to group those drinks together into a collection that makes sense. Right. So, for instance, the menu that we're doing this fall at Baccarat is actually called the Collections Menu, and it's inspired by artworks that are throughout the bar. So there are stories for each individual drink, but then the entire menu has a story behind it. So when you're thinking about a great cocktail menu, you have to consider a few different things. You want a range of base spirits, right? You want something that if someone comes in and they're a vodka drinker or gin or rum or bourbon, they have something that appeals to them. So you want to make sure you have a good sort of eclectic mix of different base spirits. You want different glassware, right? Not everything can come out in a highball glass. That would be redundant and kind of weird. So you need some rocks glasses, some highballs, champagne glasses. You need some martinis or coupes. You need different textures, right? Maybe something creamy, something effervescent with some champagne or club soda. So there are a lot of things to consider, just like a food menu. You want it to be very well-rounded. Now, one thing that in recent years has become an essential part of a well-rounded cocktail menu is low ABV and a mocktail section. It's very, very important. It's something that almost every bar menu has now, is something that's either, so low ABV could be a sherry-based cocktail, a wine-based cocktail, or even a beer, kind of a shandy, right? And then our mocktails, no alcohol at all. They could be made with non-alcoholic spirits such as Seedlip, which comes in a different, Grove, which has some spice notes to it, or Garden, which has some kind of vegetal notes. So there are a lot of fun ways that you can introduce exciting flavors into mocktails. I think it's really important to have solid mocktails on your menu, because when people come to your restaurant, your bar, or even your house, regardless of whether or not they're drinking alcohol, they should have a great experience. They should have a well thought out drink with seasonal flavors that are balanced in the same way that we build a cocktail. There should be love that's put into it. And I think even the way that it's served, it should have a beautiful garnish on it. It should be, it can be in a martini glass. It could be in a coupe glass. Just because it doesn't have alcohol doesn't mean that you can't serve it with that same sort of decorum, I guess. So on that note, today we are going to make an apple crush. I think my two brain cells were kicking around in there and just put together the most basic name possible for a fall cocktail or mocktail. But I think it's delicious. So it's going to be a mix of maple syrup, so a seasonal sweetener.
Well, Mark, if you carry on like this, you'll almost convince yourself by the end of this that a mocktail's as good as a cocktail.
Yeah. You know what? Here's the thing. If I'm a cocktail guy, more often than not, I'm going to reach for that. But if I'm not having alcohol, I would like whatever I'm drinking to have just as much thought put into it.
I agree. And actually, that's the Seedlip, the gin. Yeah. The non-alcoholic gin is kind of acceptable. When I was having a dry, whatever it was, March or October or something one year, I had that with some tonic, and it's all right.
It's pretty good.
A lot of herbs and
So you get two main things from Seedlip. You're going to get the infusion of the botanicals themselves, which that might be a little bit more difficult to kind of produce a la minute, right? So maybe you can muddle some herbs, but it's going to be difficult to muddle spices in a cocktail shaker and replicate that flavor. Whereas a non-alcoholic spirit that has that botanical infusion is going to deliver the flavor right away. But I think almost most importantly, with Seedlip, you get a body to the cocktail or to the mocktail that you wouldn't necessarily get if you were just using juices. So today we're going to go one route, which is without that non-alcoholic spirit. We're going to use fresh juices, seasonal syrup, and some sparkling cider. But absolutely, Seedlip is a great option. And when you go to a bar or restaurant, feel free to check past the cocktail section, explore the low ABV cocktails and the mocktail section, because I think these days people are really devoting just as much time, energy, and care to that portion of the menu. So we are going to make a delicious apple crush mocktail right now. We're going to start. So many elements are going to be the same as the way that we would build a cocktail. So the only thing that's happening here is we're just not really adding alcohol. But I talk all the time about the importance of fresh citrus. So this is something that, now say you're not making a cocktail, you might think, well, let me just take it easy and just buy some lemonade at the store. But again, that's going with the wrong mindset. That's going with the mindset of the mocktail doesn't deserve as much care, as much love. I say the opposite. Treat it with the same care. So you still use your fresh lemon juice, fresh lime juice. If that's what's going to make the best cocktail, that is what's going to make the best mocktail as well. So, I always say this, but let's go ahead and use our fresh lemon juice. Anytime you're using this, remember to squeeze it as close as possible to when you're making your drink. That juice will oxidize. We're going to talk more about oxidation in a second when we cut up some apples. That's probably the best visual representation of what oxidation is. You cut up an apple, it starts to turn brown. That's air starting to sort of immediately. Although a little bit of lemon juice on your apples is a great way of preserving that freshness and that color.
Same with an avocado, isn't it?
Yep, a little bit of lime juice, absolutely, will help to prevent the oxidation. Okay, so let's do 3/4 of an ounce of fresh lemon juice. We still want to measure here. We still want to be precise. And it's, it's really cool. During a lot of the virtual seminars that I did throughout the pandemic, there was constantly this call for, okay, we'd like to do a few classic cocktails, but we would love to have a mocktail option as well. So I think it's so important to really focus on that and make that available for people that are not drinking. Okay,
I have
three-quarters.
I said this to you earlier. I have quite a few friends that are pregnant right now, and if we all go out to dinner, they want to feel a part of it, so they want to have a mocktail.
Yeah.
Or I have a friend that's allergic to alcohol, and so same thing. She wants to have like a really beautiful, delicious drink, and so you're seeing it 100% more often.
Also,
Absolutely. And
the like people who are half a generation below us are not drinking as much as we do or did.
That's true.
I mean,
it's true. Yeah.
Like people in their late teens, early 20s. I'm sorry, it's not legal to drink in your late teens in the States, but people in the late teens, early 20s here are not drinking as much as we did when we were at college.
That's absolutely true. There's I won't necessarily go into what the alternatives are, but people are finding other alternatives to relax. And you're absolutely right that they may not necessarily be embracing sort of cocktails in the same way. So super, super important to make sure that whatever you're serving is interesting. Brittany, you bring up a great point. I've had so many people tell me I'm so tired of drinking cranberry and club soda. Whether it's a pregnant woman or someone that's not drinking, they get tired of the lazy mocktails because you really can't call cranberry soda a mocktail. So I think it's so refreshing when you find people that have put some real care into the non-alcoholic options. So let's use a seasonal sweetener. Again, building a great flavor profile. Some fantastic Vermont maple syrup is going to be a great way of adding depth and seasonality to this mocktail. I have to keep myself from saying cocktail. So we're going to do half an ounce. Still don't want this to be too sweet. We're also going to get some sweetness from the sparkling cider later on. So this is kind of a fun, I don't know. For me, it's a fun opportunity to introduce flavor is teas. So you can do traditional chai teas, Earl Grey. There are so many different flavors that you can choose from. But if you're embracing this seasonal fall theme, why not go ham? Get an apple cinnamon tea. It's really, really just fun. And it's such a great way of getting that kind of punch of flavor that would be difficult to do with another style of tea. What I do like to do is oftentimes when I'm using teas in cocktails or mocktails, I like to make it a little bit concentrated. So 2 tea bags per hot cup of water as opposed to 1, which is, if you're actually drinking the cup of tea. Keep in mind that concentration is going to benefit the overall taste once you mix it into the drink. You're going to have other things at play, the citrus, the sweetness. You're going to have some apple cider. You want that tea flavor to stand out. So a little bit of a concentrated tea will go a long way in sort of delivering those flavors throughout the drink. So this is just an iced apple cinnamon tea, super, super easy. 2 tea bags, 1 cup, hot water, and then just let that chill, right? So 2 ounces. This is like, look, it almost looks like a nice whiskey. And I would bet that most whiskeys that you see in a TV show or film are probably just iced tea. That's kind of the cheater that I typically use. Okay, so we are going to shake this up. Before we do that, because I know it's going to take me a while, I'm going to open up this Martinelli's sparkling apple cider. I feel like everyone has
love
seen this.
Martinelli's.
Yeah, it's so good.
Mark, there's no booze in there, no?
No. This is non-alcoholic.
Been drinking
you know what?
it since I was a baby.
Yeah, it's really, really good. You'll oftentimes see this, especially at Thanksgiving or Christmas gatherings here for kids or people that are not drinking. So I'll show you a little trick because we don't have as much history to talk about today. To open any sort of bottle top, if you don't have a wine key, which I do, but just to show you this trick, if you take really any sort of sturdy spoon or something like that, and you kind of create this almost like a fulcrum, right? So what you're going to do is put this bit underneath and use your finger as a lever. You can pop the top off, and this works with almost any type of silverware. Now this is a little flimsy, but it's going to come off eventually, or I'm going to make a fool out of myself. Okay, well, I'm bending this thing. Look at that blooper reel. It will open it. But
you got this, Mark Tubridy. You can do this.
I'm going to commit to it.
You can do it. No. Yes.
Yes.
Look
Thank
at that.
you for not giving up faith in me.
There was no. You just needed.
It was going to happen. A little encouragement.
How wet are you now?
Well, I'm starting to regret wearing this suit, but it's okay. It's okay.
Have
All in the name of science.
Have you got that on your nice pale blue shirt?
I think I'm okay. So far, so good. It is starting to bubble over, but let's give this a nice shake.
All
Again,
right.
treat it with the same respect that we would.
While you shake that, Mark. You shake.
Yep, we
right?
want to chill it. We want to make sure that we introduce some air, because when you shake a drink, remember that you're not just chilling it, you're introducing air. So you're changing the texture. You're giving it sort of a different mouthfeel. So we still want to make sure that we're in.
Yeah, while you shake,
you just want to shake.
I'm going to tell you what races we've got coming up this weekend that are win and you're in races for the Breeders' Cup. Right? Ready? Go. We have got from Belmont at the Big A, or Aqueduct, where we will be making our debuts this weekend, the Champagne Stakes, the Miss Grillo, the Pilgrim Stakes, and the Frisette Stakes. And of course, don't forget, there is the Small Matter of the Woodward with Life is Good as well. At Churchill Downs, the Ack Stakes. Santa Anita features Country Grammar & Co. in the Awesome Again Stakes and the Speakeasy Stakes. And at Paris-Longchamp, the Prix de l'Opéra Longines, the Qatar Prix Marcel Boussac, the Qatar Prix Jean-Luc Lagardère, the Qatar Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe, 20
You're
runners.
just showing off now.
The Prix de l'Abbaye de Longchamp Longines, which will be won by a 2-year-old against the elders. By the way, the 2-year-old, here's one for you. When you've asked people in the past what Breeders' Cup race are you most looking forward to, the answer has not naturally been forthcoming, the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint. But this year it's been upgraded to a Grade 1. And it is likely to feature like some serious talent. Like, I mean, it's a proper horse race this year if they all roll up.
That's a proper drink, by the way. Look at how beautiful that is.
Yeah.
Isn't
it beautiful?
Look at this. And now, again, we want to make sure that we do a proper garnish for this drink, too. So I love to do apple fans.
Can you just tilt your cat? Yeah, so we get a nice kind of look at that. Look at the color.
Beautiful.
So pretty.
Still looks
stunning.
Yeah, and we're still serving it in a champagne glass because it has that, again, that bubbly, effervescent aspect to it. So still, basically, the only thing that's missing here is the alcohol. We're still doing everything else with the same care that we would be doing for another type of drink. And so for the garnish, to do a nice apple fan, basically what I typically do is kind of cut off the side of an apple, right? Like so. Place that down, and then in the middle, so if you kind of think about it like this, in the middle, if you just do very thin slices straight down, try to get 3 that are basically similar in size and very, very thin. What you can do, either on a pick or even just like this, is you can fan that out.
Yeah.
Right? So see it more like that way, right? So a beautiful apple fan.
Pretty.
We can either, I would say, rest it right inside like that. And that is your apple crush.
Bellissima. Sorry, no, it's not French.
That's very beautiful. It really is.
Yeah. And again, a very important part of cocktail menus, low ABV and mocktails. And whether you're drinking alcohol or not, make sure that you're putting the same care into what you're drinking. Balance the flavors. Put it into a beautiful glass, treat yourself, do a great garnish. That's what mixology is all about. It doesn't need to have the strong stuff in there. It's all about balancing flavors and treating the beverage with respect. So cheers, guys. Apple crush.
If it tastes
treating the beverage with respect, that's adorable.
If it tastes as good as it looks, then I'd almost be a teetotaler.
It's really good. There's always a part of my mind that says, that would be awesome with rum or bourbon, but I'm fighting that inclination. It is delicious. I get the apple. I get the cinnamon from the tea. There's that fun bubbly quality from the Martinelli's and a soft note of maple in the background. So it's actually really delicious, really interesting.
Mark with the mocktails. Hey, Britt, where are we getting hammered Saturday night?
Nice transition. Nice transition.
somewhere in Manhattan, not with mocktails. Hopefully after some really sensational performances from the Big A. You need to get some food. I need to get on the road.
Yeah, I need to go to bed.
Water.
We'll see all of you on Saturday on NBC, 4 to 6 Eastern time for first race of our 4 races is the Woodward featuring Life is Good. And then we'll have 2 Breeders' Cup Win and You're In races. So we're looking forward to that. Nick, I'll see you in New York momentarily. Not till Friday. Women's Summit is tomorrow. Really exciting. Inaugural Women's Summit, where our very own producer.
Is the Women's Summit being streamed?
No, but they are filming it, so I'm sure after the fact it will be purchasable
Available.
somewhere.
Yeah, so it'll be online. It'll be uploaded. Yeah,
exactly.
So much hard work has gone into that. You're gonna have a lot of fun, and it's gonna be a great event.
No, I'm excited for it. And our producer of the show on Saturday just landed in LA to be a part of the Women's Summit panel, and she's flying back out to produce the show. So we're grateful for that. Okay. This was fun, you guys. Have a great rest of your week. Nick, I'll see you shortly.
See you in a bit. Cheers, Mark. Take care.
All right. Cheers, guys.
Love you guys. Night.
And they're off in the Pegasus World Cup. Life is Good came away very quick, and he's reaching out for the early lead. Joel Rosario has to move on Life is Go as he's going to lose his spot. Nick's Go had to shuffle back there. He angles for racing room, and he's third behind the superior speed of Life is Good. Life is Good settles into a rhythm up top. He leads by 2 over Stiletto Boy in second. Nick's Go is going to have to do it from off the speed today. He's racing in third with Empty Tomb at the rail in fourth. Followed fifth and wide on the course by Endorsed. It's a gap of 2 to Chess Chief. He's racing together with Commandeer. Sir Winston is second last, and the trailer is title ready, and the leader is Life is Good. Life is Good, and Irene Ortiz Jr. rolling early through a 23-second opening quarter. He has 5 lengths on his chief rival, Nick's Go, who's racing in second. Endorsed on the outside, wide on the course, while third. Empty Tomb and Stiletto Boy travel as a team, about 8 lengths off this loose leader. 3 better than Commandeer. Then Chess Chief and Sir Winston. Title ready is last of all, half a mile from home. Life is Good is still well clear. He went the opening half mile in 46 and 1. Life is Good to the far turn by many. Call it 5. Nick's Go will have to go from there. He's now second. Endorsed on the outside third. Stiletto Boy has dropped better than 10 lengths off the lead while racing fourth. Up to the outside, Sir Winston is underway, but he's a long way behind as Life is Good is still well clear. Life is Good hasn't seen a rival. He's at the quarter pole and he's in front by many. Nick's Go just has too much to do at this point as they straighten for the drive. 3/16 to go. Life is Good is still well clear. Second is Nick's Go toward the inside. Stiletto Boy back to fourth and Endorsed. Less than 1/8 of a mile from home. Life is Good is looking good. Life is Good and Irene Ortiz Jr. They ran him off their feet in the Pegasus. Life is Good